we don't have any paper to review minutes. I have them on the computer. People want to look through them.
We should have all read it before.
That's why they go out on
Exactly.
the internet.
So I'll make a motion to accept it.
Well, if anyone needs to review, I'm sure they're fine. Because we were here.
Oh, I wasn't even here.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so then, yeah, I don't know that. I couldn't make it.
So there was a motion to accept, and is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Now I'm realizing that the agenda is on the other computer.
It's almost the same thing, right? Pretty much.
Yes, the only,
You had the, what was the review of the, one of the permits or something? That was something that was different.
yeah, so we just, once we get, the only, I have to start including myself in the emails. But I guess we can communicate the information from Jim about the gate getting.
Yeah, basically, and I think everybody's probably seen this, that they asked if they could move the gate in the spring. They would move it this fall if we were super urgent, but we're not. So I gave them the okay after I got feedback. It was okay for them to move the gate in the spring at Prospect. And I still need to get in touch with Gary to just sort of plow out and fix up that area where the parking will be. And last time I was up there, I didn't see any rebound of the knotweed up there, which is good.
Yeah, I've been, every time I've gone up there, I've been working on that, so that's good.
Did you find some and have to pull it, or?
I did earlier.
Yeah, I did once, yeah.
Okay. I think that's great. I think it'll
Yep.
work well. Any other Prospect Farm? No? Great. Jackson Falls, I have not heard from Brian about signs. If he's spoken with Gary at all, so. I guess the only other thing was, I think we have to bite the bullet and just assume it's never going to dry out.
I have already moved about 2/3 of the pile,
Okay.
and I can finish that off. Just, all of a sudden it was raining again, so was it?
Good job.
Thank you.
But I wanted to get him out there because he's gonna put the handicap.
Right.
But I should be able to do it in the next couple of days.
I spoke with Gary Allen about storing the lath material that we got to do that. It is now at the Gray's Inn garage, tucked in over there, so.
What I was gonna do with the remaining chips is essentially just bring it from where the handicap parking will be down to the front of the porta potty. And then later on, if we get into trying to put in something that's more permanent for handicap, but I think a thin layer down through there is probably the best thing, and not use the lattice material at this point for that section.
Yes, I think when we use that lath material, we should be using it with the stone, crushed
Yeah, yeah.
stone.
I do too.
do you want to put any of the wood chips down for the handicap barrier? Or, because I mean, is it harder with the wood chips than it would be?
If it's a
by
thin
itself?
layer, I think it should be fine. I mean, it's a fairly flat
Hmm.
piece coming down through there. And later on, if we want to make it official, then we
Mhm.
just, I mean, those things just deteriorate in a year or two anyway, so it's not like,
Mhm.
it's a big deal. I mean, my guess is next year we'll get more to touch up the areas.
Right.
Okay. I don't want to say that my little rant helped, but there has been significantly less trash, or people have been picking up more trash about town, so. That's great. There's still a few,
Yeah, I did pick up some dog food, but I had a good container, so I'm gonna wait it done.
so I think just people pitching in, that's gonna be the best way of handling that.
Any progress on no parking signs?
That Gary has been coordinating with Brian regarding that,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't gotten an update from Brian. I think he was just going to try to fit it in. He has accepted our offer of 2,500 to do the work. He said it might be more than that, but he'll make 2,500 work to get all of those dug and planted.
Is that the cost of the post too, or just the digging?
That is the installation cost.
Hmm.
The posts,
Like the 800 or something.
yes. And I have not heard from Brian on,
I think he's gonna need to rent a machine to drill some of the holes up there.
yes. I guess those are the only two or items I had for that. Does anyone else have any Jackson Falls?
Oh, I did get some information if you wanted to plant hay-scented ferns or blueberry sod, because there's more areas that would benefit. Because I tried to block some of them off, some of the little paths off with the brush, and people keep coming along and pulling it out. So it's basically $700 per 100 square foot, and that includes delivery. They all require, whether you do sod, which is heavy, and you need a forklift to get the pallet off, or the hay scented, the vendor basically said, those are lightweight, you can pull those off by hand.
Okay.
But you're still gonna need sod not sod, but loam underneath some of the stuff, and peat moss and some manure. That's what we've always done.
Those spaces that you've seen people coming down, is that from Valley Cross or from
You know where we planted
Carter?
the big patch that's up there?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of clay that's sort of exposed around there, and I think it would really benefit from being covered up.
Okay.
Because there's a bunch of paths that could be closed down. Yeah. And I noticed that the one we put in down below, people have been trying to come up through it. So I put some of the little garden fence with survey tape on it, because they literally will come up from the falls, walk through that area, have to go over the little fence. It's kind of like, and then for the fern area that I had out there, I finally gave up and put survey tape on all the fence, because there was somebody who was painting, at the falls there a few weeks ago, and she was sitting right next to it, and she said, that's gonna have to be white. She said, people just aren't seeing it, so that's why it keeps getting trumped on, so.
I think if we really want people to stay on the trails, we need to actually have, like posts that come in with little ropes or something, particularly in the
Yeah,
high traffic areas. I
until
mean,
stuff's.
we use those on Mount Katahdin, and they actually, I shouldn't say we, but Baxter State Park did, works very, very well.
Yeah, you definitely have to. do
I
it.
think ferns will not stop them. It's an easy thing to walk through. I think it would be money down the drain without some sort of fencing to
Mhm.
control it.
I agree. They were pretty bad this summer. And that was not a lot of people too.
No. Ferns go quickly with traffic.
Well, the thing is, people would pick the fence up and throw it into the woods. They pick the logs up and throw them into the
Yeah.
woods, or they take them away. It's like, really, people?
Well,
I didn't
I
have
think the
sign.
brush, a lot of people just feel like I'm clearing the trail.
Yeah.
I don't think brush is the most effective mechanism because of that. That's
But they
why,
must wonder.
you know, something like a little iron post that's about this high with
Yeah.
an eyelet in it and just run, you know, rope. It's aesthetic, it's
Yeah.
not big, it's
Yeah.
not like a big wooden fence or
Yeah.
something, but
But you have to
And the-
understand that people keep clearing it and keep putting it back. They keep, it's gonna be the same people.
yeah. But I don't know, I look at the license plates there, I'm not convinced it is the same people because Quebec, New York City, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, it's, I know in the whites, what do they figure, 50% of your audience every year is brand new, whatever, but it's probably in that ballpark.
But I have noticed that there have been 3 cars with passes at the parking area a couple of days. So that was pretty cool. These locals are using it.
But I think if we want to use some fencing like that, we probably should look at it next spring.
Yeah, I think you really
Yeah.
need something more substantial, I agree.
I don't know what others think, but I think,
I like your idea.
yeah.
So, if we were to plan, like, ideally, what is the best time to do?
Well, we did the blueberry sod last
In
time
the
we did it in the
fall.
fall.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice because it's the snow melt, waters it. Because if you do it in the spring, we always end up getting way too late a start. And then it's just a lot of watering by hand to make sure it doesn't die. So, and I didn't know how people felt. Gary, is it Gary? Who's at Eastern Green? He was very strong about hay-scented ferns. He said, why aren't you putting those in? So, I thought, we could try that.
Okay.
When is the invasives seminar or whatever, presentation? The
That,
20-something?
Yeah, it's on the agenda, it's just on. 21st.
yes,
And where will that be?
at the Quacket Preserve, in Conway.
Yeah.
And I can,
Is anybody gonna go to that?
I would like to, you
Yeah,
already,
I've mumbled enough about invasives that I think I should go.
so when I spoke to Steve Frackleton, who's on the Bartlett Conservation Commission, they're kind of in the same boat as we are, trying to put together just a plan to address the issue. And the first thing that the state says is make an inventory of the items. And so they have a program that they use to log the coordinates of all the areas. So I think they'll probably cover that and how we can put together that list so we can know which areas need to be treated or have been treated, or as things go on, we can manage or, keep monitoring things that have been treated. So,
Right, well, you have to have a baseline to start from and
yes.
So what time-
establish that.
So what time is that? Is this an invasives, like treatment of invasives, or?
Well, I've had a lot of questions from people of what to do with knotweed and how to deal with it. So I think we'll eventually need to come up with a paper that we could hand out and say, okay, purple loosestrife, knotweed, whatever, dig it up. Get the roots out of there.
I
But I think we have to get that down on paper sometime, probably this winter.
Mm.
Yeah, so their program will be Thursday, the 21st, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Pequawket Pond Preserve in Conway.
I bet there are plenty of bases there.
Yeah, and if anyone needs directions on how to get there, I can get those to you. But I would like to attend that, so I've been,
That's this Thursday. is it?
the 21st, the week before.
Yeah, I took a foreign invasive course with the AMC, and they brought us down to Jackson Village.
There is so much I mean, since you brought that up, I started just mentally inventorying where it is. It is so extensive in town now, and so much of it is on, I mean, it's on a lot of the town's roadways, but a lot of it is on private property as well. There's no way you're gonna dig your way out of this. You're gonna have to chemically treat it, and you're gonna have to, the two challenges, I mean, I'm just giving my opinion, but the two challenges that you'll have out there is, one is what do you do when it's on private property versus town property? And the second is who pays when it's on private property for treatment versus on town property? But if you want to really extensively treat it, there's no way you're going to dig your way out of this.
In the past, right, when the town has hired someone to treat the roadways, haven't they offered it to private individuals to basically jump on and
But that's,
contract the services also?
yeah, I mean, that's where the inventory comes in.
Hmm.
So that if you're going to put together a proposal as to how much it's going to cost, you first inventory to see where it is and how much you got, and sometimes you get a bid for what it's going to cost to treat it. I mean, I hate to offer that as a solution, but it's just too pervasive. I mean, it's just everywhere now. It's,
Well, I think it gets spread by the town guys, basically, going in.
no, it's,
That's how I think I get it, and I can pull it, because it's not much, but
no, it's in behind
So they
Wildcat Tavern. It's in the golf course pond down here. It's much more than just the,
I think
The
there's
drainage
one
district.
that's,
yeah.
Well, there's a company currently clearing lines in town, and I have seen them chip a lot of invasive species in the past 2
yeah.
weeks. They put a lot of knotweed and glossy buckthorn in the chipper. So, I mean, certainly that you know, there's some part there, but I don't know what you do. It's a private contracted, you know, entity
Mhm.
that's operating on, you know, right of ways. I don't know how that plays out, but
Do they take their chips with them, or do they leave it?
I saw a little bit of both.
And I don't know how much seep, I'd have to look it up again, but, I mean, the bees love to pollinate it. It's heavily pollinated by bees.
I know, that is its redeeming thing. That is one of its redeeming things.
Yeah.
Feeds bees.
And I don't know how much it propagates by seed. I mean, vegetatively, it's very effective, but it may be, which means your birds and everything else. But judging from all the places you've seen, it's more than just the town spreading it. That's clear.
I know near me, people planted it a long time ago as a way to deal with wetland. Because it was like the thing that you were told to do. Like, oh, you got a wet boggy spot? Plant Japanese knotweed, it'll dry up your
People used to
yard.
cultivate it, yeah. I mean,
Mm.
it's not an ugly plant, just,
Okay.
but then if it's gonna be inventoried properly, you really need somebody or people who can go out and really just map the whole town effectively. And when you knock it down, it's a couple of years from now, you're gonna be back treating it again, that's a given.
Right, which I guess brings to mind like a larger coordinated effort of having, in my mind, if people are squeamish about treating chemically, but they can go out and cut things back and have a place to store it safely, so rather than it getting chipped, that it can get stored and dried, which is what all the departments of agriculture recommend in the treating, is that in the disposal of it, that's where it gets spread. So as long as it can get dried out and then be rendered not, so it won't propagate from the cuttings. If we had a central place to just stack things, pile it up and put a tarp over it and let it sit for a year and get dried out, that would be good, but I think it needs a larger footprint, or I think we can, more people, I think a lot of people would benefit from that, and just having, and not just the town, but I think.
Well, a lot of people would benefit just from knowing
Mhm.
what to do. Because I think that many of the homeowners, may see a patch of it down, along their driveway or the roadway and not think about it, oh, isn't that interesting?
Right. Mike, did you get any other follow-up from the Historical Society, or they were just asking what to do about it?
They were asking what to do about it, and I got the sense that maybe they'd like the town to do something about it. They're worried about filling up the furnace, maybe. Well, they're worried there's something, they need access
They
to
need
it.
access behind it.
They need access behind it, and the concern was that we don't want to go in and just, if whoever it is that needs access is just going to mow it down, or try to get back there and say we needed this. So there was concern with that. There was concern about chemical treatment, since it's right in the water. They were looking for direction. Maybe they were sent kind of a list of options, and they kind of felt maybe that was beyond the ability of the volunteers of the Historical Society. Like it was just too intensive for the demographic of volunteer.
Okay.
I was thinking maybe just kind of overall a good first step is just doing some like community canvassing, just putting out the word and just saying like, okay, tell us where do you see a lot of knotweed? Where do you see a lot of purple loosestrife? Where are these spots? So before, just to get some sort of baseline, and then it gets checked by someone, but like, kind of like a community science kind of thing, like, hey, you see it, report it, and we can kind of build out a map.
Okay.
And that at least does some of the initial legwork, so that way we're not hiring someone to drive all over town or walk all over town or whatever. So maybe it just starts with just some community reporting, and then we go from there. I think you're right in that knowing where it is kind of the first thing we should do. Like what's here, like an inventory. What's here, how much is it, where is it? Because we might put out information that says, oh, you should treat it like this, but if we then find out like, oh, actually there's way more of it, or there's like whatever, there might be different solutions based on where it is, how much it is, and like having that full picture might be a good idea before putting out, telling people, making a plan to treat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think I guess
I was gonna say, if you follow that strategy, you really wanna create a form so that you're getting all the information in a coherent way, as opposed to just saying, tell us where it is.
Oh, yeah, and I don't know if it's
I mean,
like
people
something
can take their cell phones today and get the lat longs right on it, just
Yeah.
go to Google Maps.
it's just
Show them how to do it, and I suspect that's what part of that training session will be, is, if people give you the lat long and say, it's a small clump, or send a picture, that's a good way to get volunteers to start to help create that inventory. But I would suggest we wait and see how they're recommending the inventory process. I mean, they may have the form already done, in which case we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, I was just thinking like a Google form or something where it's
Yeah.
like, click, click, click. Yeah, I don't know, is that part of the workshop, or are they just doing identification? I'm sure it'll be a component we can talk about.
well, he sent. I'm trying to find. He sent a link to the tool that they're using, but it's not. Coming up here. So I guess we'll keep thinking about that.
Yeah, I think after the seminar, we'll have a little more information, and then, you know, we're not gonna solve the problem this fall, so I think we've got time to put together a plan, and, you know, whatever papers we have to put together, we can do it.
I think the only timing issue, Dick, and I don't have a good answer for this, but if you decide you're gonna hire somebody to come in to do the control, you'd have to put it in the town warrant for budgeting purposes, which would be, if you're gonna treat next year, we gotta get that in by early next year, beginning.
Well, I can't
March,
remember that,
Yeah.
February is, I think, the cutoff
And
date.
if you're gonna do the inventory, you really should be doing it this month or early next month before you get a frost. That's the timing problem.
Everything is in bloom right now.
Uh,
I mean, I think that the, knotweed's in bloom.
Yeah, it is, definitely is.
We do have info on knotweed and loosestrife on our website currently. And I thought we used to link to the UNH extension's little pamphlet also, but I don't see that link there. And that could be, that's kind of hard to read. I don't know if we need more of like a bullet pointy thing, but I feel like your average person doesn't read it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've forwarded to you about that question, and a lot of it has to do with like commercial contracting scale land clearing. It's not really geared to a homeowner.
Yeah, because their response when I forwarded it was, yeah, we can't do this. You know, we need some help, somebody to do it for us. I think that was the intent with Leslie.
Yeah.
This is a big job if you really go at it.
Right, which is why I feel like
Not
having
gonna be
a
a
lot
handful of
more
volunteers.
hands on deck to help with that.
I wonder who from the select, because I presume it was the select board that used to arrange for it, or is it the road agent that used to arrange for townwide treatment? Like, is that still not, like, is there also a parallel process that happens in some other town entity?
I've only recalled that it happened, well, in my memory, I've only recalled that it happened once, and that was a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago. Does that sound right? But they did some spraying along the road.
I can't remember how the funding came about for that, whether they just said, okay, we're gonna raise $5,000, we'll get $5,000 worth of treatment. And then, I don't even remember how they picked out the spots, because there are, you know, 1 square yard clumps,
Yeah.
and then there's 20 square yard clumps. So, you know, do you just hammer the big ones and let the little ones get bigger, or do you hit a whole bunch of little ones? And I don't know what the, but I did see that there was a state poster up in the highway department identifying invasives. So the road crew, I think, is coming into it as far as being a resource. You know, if you're talking about inventory, they can certainly have an idea of where the big clumps are along the town roads. I think we would have to go along the rivers, because I know that, like on Great Brook, if there's a clump up, you know, by the Dundee Bridge, it's seeding all the way down, you know, all along. It's great tenacious stuff. But I think the road agent or the road crew can help. Probably the road agent would be the point person there to identify those bigger clumps that are along the roads. And I have a contact for an applicator who's licensed, and he's licensed for along waterways, and he's worked for some pretty good sized towns down the southern tier. And I'll ask him, you get, how much can we get out of 2 days or 3 days of application, and then what would that cost be? And kind of give us a parameter there to ask for money. Show me the money.
Yeah, so I just found the tool.
Oh, and then we'll have to overcome the aversion to any spray. And obviously, on private property, people will have the say. We can't do anything about that. But along the road right-of-ways, I think we can go ahead and treat.
So the tool that the state is using is called EdMaps. And just looking at in the Jackson area, there's already quite a few spots logged. So you can search, well, I'll send this link out, but that's pretty cool. You can kind of and I think this is just more sort of citizen scientist, so someone has gone through and flagged areas. So it looks like the Forest Service has flagged things. So this looks like, and it also has areas where they treated, it just logged where they are, so it's kind of a good visual tool, and I think that'll probably help for having homeowners report.
Yeah. That's cool.
So, very basic, it'll, but, so that'd be interesting, fun to learn more about that. So I guess since we've jumped around on our agenda, kind of jump back up and catch you up on, I was able to make contact with the state on the state's VRAP coordinator.
Oh, okay.
So we're on their list for next year to get something going. So
Awesome.
come March is when we need to submit our plan. Some of the other tests that they don't cover, we're looking at getting funding or just out of the budgeting process to do testing for bacteria that we would pay for and have done at a local lab rather than having to run to contract.
I did get the cost for that.
Okay.
So they said it would be $35 with a count, for the, count. They said of how much bacteria or how much coliform, that sort of thing.
Was that for both total and fecal?
Yeah.
So it's a combined for the two?
Is that the place in Conway?
Mhm.
Yeah.
They actually test at a dairy, but
Yeah.
you bring them up.
It's a pretty simple test, actually.
Yeah. But apparently, because I told them what it was for, and they said, well, you want a river water. And apparently, the test comes with a whole bunch of other things too, but they said you're gonna want the count. So it's the two tests you told me to get.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all in one.
if it's all in one, then it's
Right.
fine, but actually the only thing you really care about is fecal.
Okay.
I mean, total is soil bacteria, everything else. If you get a high number of total,
Right.
then next thing you're gonna do is sample for fecal to see whether the total is made up, what percentage is made up of fecal.
Okay. So when they say number,
That's a number per 100 milliliter sample usually is what it is.
so it's total or fecal, yeah.
Usually they do both, and you can give either their presence, absence, or you can count individual bacteria and give them.
So there's a reason, but basically this person said you're gonna want the count. So it's $5 more, otherwise it'd be $30.
Okay.
It's worth the $5. I mean, the big thing I think we discussed last time is you're concerned about people who are swimming in the Wildcat Falls area, little kids inhaling the water, drinking the water accidentally, that sort of stuff. And if you have a high fecal, and periodically there were high fecals coming down through there because Davis has had a pig farm right up on Great Brook, it just,
Right.
Yeah, and, you know, when you have animals.
Oh, and there were horse, you know.
There were horses, yeah,
horses
and your
up
people
the road.
will shoot up, yeah. In fact, that's why they close swimming at the Whitney Pond.
Well, they have quite a bloom in there. I mean,
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
an algae bloom.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
But we used to, when I first moved here, we used to swim all the time. And it got shut down in large part. Well, there are horses, and then you had, you know, dairy operations without good riparian buffers. Not dairy, but cattle and that sort of stuff. yeah.
Okay, well, and we'll just continue working on that over the winter, so they're, in the information that they had like 14 test sites that had been logged before, up Great Brook, up to Prospect, kind of basically just measuring at all of the road crossings
Okay.
for access. That might be beyond, well, just putting together a volunteer program, because that's a lot for a two-person team to cover in one day. So, like having a volunteer group set up, having some manpower, because they like to have them do the testing in pairs.
We could do some kind of just like, volunteer testing day, and you have a brief instruction thing, meet here in the morning, send everybody out, everybody collects, you come back, you feed them, you give them like, you buy a pizza or something.
Well, you gotta drive the samples down to
Yeah.
the test site.
Oh, yeah, I just mean for the day,
Because
so-
bacteria has to be done within, I forget, 24 hours.
Yeah,
whatever it
well,
is.
their schedules, you have to be there by 3, because they ship it to their lab and dairy.
So you get enough volunteers that you can go, each of them go to 1 or 2 sites. You have it done in the morning, they're done by lunch. Volunteers can stay here and have something to eat, and somebody runs the stuff up. Something like that.
Okay.
And I'm sure if you put out a thing and just said, hey, we're looking for people to help do this, that would have a couple people. And as long as it's all roadside and easy accessible, that wouldn't be too hard, I wouldn't think.
Okay.
And
We
this
don't-
year, when the budget gets put together, don't forget to put lunch money in there.
Pizza money.
One sample is like 100 pizza.
I mean, that's how you
How are you?
get, suppers, that's how you get people together. If you have lunch, you know,
It works
they'll
even better
show
if
up.
you can coincide it with something. If it's like if it's like Earth Day, or if it's like the Jackson's Charter Day, or whatever. Like if there's some kind of thing you can tie it to, that also gets
But
more people as
the
well.
VRAP has, what, once a month or twice a month? I can't remember.
Twice,
Twice a month.
yeah.
So you're really talking about every 2 weeks somebody's going out and doing it. It's not just wrapped around a particular day.
I guess I could be wrong. I thought the management plan just had it for once a year, the one that was written for the Wildcat River. I thought it was just once a year thing.
The VRAP program runs from May to September, and does testing twice a month for that. That's what their funding covers. So that's what they're looking to do.
That's a lot.
But isn't it really just taking your test tube, going down and blowing it up, putting a cap on it,
Yeah.
and bringing it back to the collection site? I mean,
There are a couple of
It's not
other
that hard.
tests that use a meter that needs to be calibrated, and
And bacteria one is-
and you have to share the meter maybe? It just doesn't seem like it would take that long.
yeah,
Just thinking.
I'll get,
I think the meter's conductivity, if I remember right, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Just, I don't know, I test water at my house, so I'm like.
Yeah.
Conductivity is just how much dissolved substances you have. The more salt-like substances, it'll conduct electricity better.
Okay.
So it's a raw indicator that you have more or less stuff in here. Most of our water here is going to test out very close to distilled water.
Except at the end of the winter when we get all the salt from the roads going to
Yeah,
We're still
most
dissolving.
likely it has moved through.
by then.
Well, actually, they may still see it moving, yeah. It's usually sodium chloride here, yeah.
And that will be from road salt?
Yeah.
Mm.
and that is one of the, I think the coordinator, that might be his area of expertise, because he said he runs the chloride tests himself, so.
If you have a well that's on a house that's near like Route 16, you probably want to test for sodium chloride because, I mean, I had a student way back when I was teaching, go through and test all the wells near the major roads and you'll see real high levels of, which is not good for people with high blood pressure, whatever, but they're taking a lot of salt and they don't know,
Salt.
yeah. It's coming from the road salt, yeah, because road salt is very mobile.
Yeah.
The other idea is to try and fold it into someone's job who would be in those areas anyway. Where it's like, okay, like the road agent or somebody, you know, like the other thing, if not volunteers, then you have it be someone's, you know, if there's someone that works for the town that's like periodically in some of these places, can they test? I didn't realize it was that often. That may or may not be often volunteers.
Yeah.
That Wayne's enthusiasm. I think
I
about
mean,
it.
I wouldn't mind doing it as long as I can do it at a time when, you know, like on Friday morning or something.
Yeah, the time is convenient to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we can do it that way too.
and I pick a spot, you know, and say, I'll do the falls, or I'll do
Yeah.
whichever.
Well, as we get closer, we can put together
Yeah.
a plan, and, you know, if each of us takes one volunteer with us, that might make it a little bit,
It's good to have backup, yeah.
Get a business to sponsor it. Right? If a business adopts that part of the river. And so they have an employee who goes out once every 2 weeks. Right? You get someone from the Wentworth, you get someone from Eagle Mountain House. Plenty of hotels up and down that thing. Right?
okay. Well, but we'll continue putting that together. But March is kind of our deadline to submit our testing plan to the state.
It's actually before that, because if we're gonna put it in the budget, we have to have it ready for the
Right.
budget.
But I'm just more of our testing protocol,
Yeah.
what we're going to do. Thanks for making it, Brian.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from Gary?
I did. He is still able to do it this September.
Okay.
But he also said he would keep the price if we wanted to do it in the spring, just because it's one less year than our targets for plow. So he was comfortable either way.
That's very thoughtful.
He just wanted to throw it out there. But, okay, I'll hold my price if we're trying to figure stuff out.
I guess,
That was the extent of it. I told him we had a meeting, but then the meeting got pushed off for a week.
It's actually a really good point.
So things just kind of got pushed. I wanted to talk to everybody. I wasn't sure if we were, there was just a couple of us, but yeah, so he's still happy. He wanted to make sure that when he goes there to do the project, that
he has someone running interference.
Mm,
Okay.
in case we harm the tree roots.
I guess that's not, you know, I wouldn't say right, that's one way of putting it, but he does good work and I think he's respectful and has a track record of being conscientious, so.
Well,
I think
yeah.
The offset of, in doing what he's doing, is a benefit to the overall habitat up there, so I think if we look at it like that, if everybody looks at it like that, it's to keep the place under control.
Can we put something out in the news that says all that? Right before it happens?
Yeah, so if he gives us a date, I'll send out a notice to E-News.
I think that's good. Yeah. Yeah, because he's very generous.
Should we put like the price of one post or whatever in our annual budget? Recurring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, you know,
That's a good idea.
or,
Two.
yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, we were gonna buy more than we needed for this initial process.
if he just keeps,
I'll send him a message tonight when we get out of the meeting saying that, yeah, we're all for it, and we'll put something in email that he needs that explains what's going on and just.
But we needed to give him an answer right about what we want this year, next year, so let him decide.
Yeah, this year is what we're shooting for.
I mean, I guess I would just prefer to have it happen. If we push it out to spring, it
Yeah.
makes it a lot
We'll make
easier.
up some new.
Yeah.
It's rainy.
And I've got a bunch of the wood chips already moved, and I'll finish that this week sometime.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, so you're just in time for our wetlands permit. Did,
He's got some glosses here for it.
Yeah.
We didn't have this last time?
no, we did.
We did, I thought so. Have you guys looked at it? It's that it's the last house, it's the last lot on Balloon Road on the right-hand side, which you would almost not. I mean, it was for sale like 2 years ago, roughly. We had some concerns about it, and like, what do you have to share, I thought?
I went up and took a look at it.
Yeah,
It was running water when I looked at it.
yeah,
It's a stream coming. I mean, in a dry year, it's not going to be, but there was running water coming down through there.
yeah.
I mean, my take is if you take that broad seep, it's the same thing I said before, and you funnel it back into a culvert, and then you're gonna just shoot that energy right down below. If you're gonna take that area of wetland that's running water right now, you need something that's broad to let it through.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the only, just to refresh my memory, I believe we got an email, right, we got a response about the fact that if someone's well is located that close to the perimeter of their property, then they're not always protected by the radius of, is that?
Well, I guess there's 2 points on the well. One, it's an abandoned, non-functional well, which is kind of moot. But also that any well installed closer than 65 feet to the property line cannot expect to have a full protective radius.
Mhm.
So it would be a taking of the abutter's property rights.
Right, yeah.
So that was his response to that concern. I would agree.
And he also responded to the water
Yes.
flow, I thought, too.
And I did not get into a back and forth with him on this, but he said that the increased flow through the culvert is flawed. He said that they're citing the culvert where the intermittent stream channel is and expect it to handle the flow that it gets normally through that. And so their citing of that is that that is the narrowest and least intensive impact on the wetlands, which is further uphill. The wetlands themselves, that is not, well, I guess it's flagged all through there as wetlands.
Mm.
And I guess, so, but yes, when I went up there, there was evidence that it was running full width where it was flagged, there was grass that had been matted down in the high rain. So,
I didn't buy his argument totally.
and I guess that comes to us as to what is our concern there, that it's going on.
This is the parking lot here.
But anytime you take a, well, I mean, this is the reason why
It's like here.
you have problems below culverts.
Trails, right?
You know, when you come through, when you constrict it, now you've got all that energy going through at that point. And it's gonna start to scour out underneath.
But it's right in that
So if
zone.
you lengthen the
One of the
culvert,
maps
does that make it increase the
No,
fire?
you want, it's the width, it's not the length.
Yeah.
I get lucky, get this. call sometimes, like, hey, it's on the market. Like, I was like, oh, here's another one. What would you do?
Yeah.
Well, this is actually a really, if I remember correctly, yeah, this is, I believe this is a really high-tech, well, high-tech, tank for this system. This is like a.
It's like a quarter acre lot, isn't
It's a
it?
new style of holding tank that's, it's like $13,000 or something, just for that style of a tank. So that's why I asked about it.
Disposal, so this is the.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's the well on the other property? Should be right there.
The other one in there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Is this a pump system or is it a gravity system?
I believe it's gonna be gravity. Yeah, look at that.
Because when I went up there was water running right down, more or less just to the right of the well. Not the well, to the left, what you're looking at it.
They only gonna access it? Oh, with the driveway. So
Yeah, that's what they're doing. That's
Yeah.
what they're.
I see. So we're crossing the wetland right there.
Yeah, what they're doing is taking a broad wetland like this, and then that flow is coming down, and it is seeping through here, because you can see as you saw as well, it's matted, and there's kind of a major, well, there's sort of a defined channel that the water's moving down through, but when it's high water, it's moving like this.
Mm-hmm.
So that when they constrict it like this, they're gonna be shooting everything
Yeah, yeah.
right straight through there. I mean, but they,
And dumping it on the neighbors.
they're dumping it on the neighborhood,
Where they
exactly.
increase pitches too.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where the slope begins. I mean,
I mean, you know, what they do in a number of places, like on mountain slopes when they're putting in wind farms and that, is they essentially just put a big rock in here. So, then you put your culvert, but you'd also put in big rock here so that you can get flow right straight through the whole thing. But, you know, this is a problem with so many roads, logging roads in particular, where you trench, you bring all that flow into a single pipe and then you shoot it through.
mhm.
And then, you know, you just, you know, hydraulic
Erosion and everything.
dredging is what you've got downstream of it.
So, I guess,
I mean, I think all we can do is give our opinion and then they
Right.
go from there.
Yeah, which is this the normal, like the state, we're asking the state to look at more? Kind of,
well, this is an expedited minimum impact permit.
so we would say we don't want it to be expedited, basically.
Right, that's all.
Yeah, yeah.
I think we say our concern is, you know, we look at it as flowing water, but it's much broader than that, and by funneling it into a narrow, you know, to a single culvert, we have concerns about that engineering design. State can decide whether they go with it or not, I guess,
Mhm.
but,
So we can, what kind of response do we produce? Is it just a heads up that we have?
That's
or-
basically all that we can do.
Well, it's, if we deny the expedited permit, they can still apply for the standard dredge and fill permit. And we don't have any say over that, that's all through the state.
Right. But we can say we have concerns.
Yes, and I mean, they just sort of dismissed our concerns as
They, the state, or they,
the engineer.
they're hired.
Oh, their hired engineer
yeah.
is going to dismiss our concerns.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah, so we're essentially just flagging it for the state to be like, hey, you should really come look at this and.
Yeah.
We tell them what our concerns are.
Great.
And I guess, you know, the town is listed as an abutter, but also, you know, Jackson Ski Touring has an interest, I don't know what their, because the trail,
The trail does come down through here, I mean,
it's right,
that's
right
still just a
now-
back country, so it's, but yeah, but this, it's really protecting the landowner down here. The ski trail is there, yes.
Mhm.
I drone everyone, we have some people visiting, so I'm gonna take off.
Mm.
See if
Sure.
there's fun. Yeah. See ya.
See you, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. You know,
Some of you guys have worked with this guy before, which makes it not fun, but
yeah, I hired him.
Yeah.
For this exact reason. Well, I hired him to flag the areas, not to create situations,
Yeah.
to resolve it, but.
I don't think, the word isn't you can't do it, it's just we're questioning, whether this is the best way to condense and force a flow. It's the cheapest way to do it.
Yeah, certainly is.
We like to use least expensive.
Yeah.
See, in these pictures we're taking in 2022, which is the drought year.
Yeah.
When you look at these pictures, you would say that this is not an issue, because there's no water, there's hardly a trickle in Wildcat, forget here, but.
Yeah, but if you spend any time, even if the leaves hadn't fallen, if you spend any time there, it looks just like an area that water flows across because it's all,
Yeah, I rode my,
everything's knocked down
when I
and
rode my
every
bike
rock
out,
is
there was
exposed.
definitely,
Yeah,
there's a visible stream moving down, but as Ben said, you can also see that.
yeah,
And then it really gets to running, it's dispersed even further.
yeah.
Because if I understand, and I haven't really studied this, but this becomes an impermeable barrier, and the only place for the water to get through is there.
Mhm.
So is it, we just don't sign it, or is there areas for comment? I don't know if we've ever not signed one. I don't know how that works.
I don't know either.
I don't think we've ever not just
Yeah,
said, okay.
It says existing drive, so I'm looking for their access.
there isn't, I mean, it's just like literally you just pull off the,
That's just a parking lot and
yeah, it's not, even
muck your way through.
it's just like the road widened out there a bit.
And it's just right when you,
Yeah, this is
Turn.
the gate to, go up, to start the hike.
oh, it's on that side.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
dump, it's the dump parking, it's old dump parking.
Oh, okay, I got confused where it was. So the little cabin is
Yes.
right down
Yeah.
there. Gotcha. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it continues, if I remembered right, there's a broad seepage below that area.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty steep in there.
Yeah, once you get to here.
Yeah,
I
we're
don't
looking
think
at
anybody's
it.
drops
want
right
to see
down.
a well over there.
I don't, the well, I don't think in particularly if it's been disbanded, it's really just it's a thing of constricting and then forcing water through and then eroding away at your neighbor's property.
But on another point though, if this buyer was to put a well in there, and it's right next to where the old transfer dump was, that's still being monitored, right?
But his well is probably, well, hydrologically, it might not be, but most likely it's above the flow of the dump, because it's uphill.
Okay.
Yeah, and it says there's a 75-foot minimum to former solid waste disposal site.
State standards are pretty low.
Yeah, I would say it's a 75-foot.
It doesn't
Setback
matter if you're
from
up
just
wind
about
or down.
everything. The septic system that's over 4 bedrooms, I think is 100 foot.
Well,
So-
yeah, it's kind of goofy because, if he has to drill down 150 feet through bedrock,
Yeah,
then he might actually be tapping in because the flow in bedrock is really convoluted.
Yeah.
You just think everything's downhill, but when you're in bedrock, that's just not the case.
No, it goes through seams.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It could go,
yeah, if you come around it.
if he goes shallow, and he may, if he's in a well, and wouldn't be unusual, you might have a shallow well until you get to a year like 2022, and then all of a sudden the shallow well doesn't work.
Yeah, we've had a customer drill a well off of Malone Road, and they had to go quite deep.
Yeah.
And they went right along the edge of the river.
Is there a building permit there yet?
I haven't, I don't know of one yet, to be honest.
Because we can talk to Kevin Bennett and just say, you know, we have concerns.
Hmm.
And is the concern mitigated by an increased culvert size? Like,
No, because the concept is still the same. They're restricting the flow. They're putting in a barrier, putting the culvert here, and it's, you know, like trying to shoot more water through, so it's a bigger tube, but it's still gonna, you know, take all that flow through there. And I'm not sure that that's the way to do it, but as was said, it's the least expensive way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and it's tricky, I mean, it's, to have the culvert be coming out on your abutter's property
Yeah.
line is.
Right, yeah, because it does go all the way to the.
Yeah, I mean, if the homeowner, if they're happy with it.
well, I think part of it is also that this is a combination for the dredge and fill, but it's also for the purpose, the stated purpose for doing that is to bury the new water line or utilities, to bury the utilities there. So, like, if they were to just put a bridge there, that would solve the problem, but it wouldn't solve the buried utilities.
Hmm.
But the utility is just what, the power line?
Yeah,
You can run the utility right in the
Right.
bridge, yeah.
well, that's when the state, that's when, if there's an if there's another option that allows you to do the same process without affecting the wetlands, then typically they would then look at that and say, well, no, we have a solution for you, and it's this. And just because you want this doesn't mean we have to give it to you.
Yeah.
But this was, yeah, right. Well, you could still have a bridge and have, no, I don't know, I guess you can't have your power be in a conduit that's exposed.
No, I think it has to be encased in concrete.
Concrete, yeah, it would be, yeah.
But for our intents and purposes, though, we don't need to offer a solution. We just need to tell them this is not, we don't think this is the right solution.
Right.
Right? So
Right.
in our response, we don't have to tell them anything other than,
Well, I think.
Because
we're
we're
concerned
responding to the
about-
state, is that correct?
Yeah,
yeah, that we're just concerned about this design.
yeah, well, I think it's nice to know, like, when Ben presented that, it does allow you the concept of, wait, there is another option. And the option is potentially that you create a way of driving over this and don't affect it, and your power can come in a different way.
Do you have a form that we send to the state in response, is that correct?
We just don't.
I mean, we're asked for our opinion, but who are we sending our opinion back to? On these wetland permits?
I'll have to look into that more,
Yeah.
because there's only, we sign to approve. There's no check, we do not approve.
And if we sign to approve, we give that to the developer, or do we give it to the
You
state?
give it to
It goes back
the
to,
clerk.
well,
Goes back to this guy, doesn't it? Doesn't
it goes back to him, and then they notify the abutters.
I thought it goes back to the town clerk first, and she has to sign it as well.
No, that's when it comes back from the notice to the abutters.
So this hasn't even gotten to that point, okay. If they could just like print out the important papers in a different color, you could actually be pretty good at this. But 164 pages of fluff. It's really hard to, yeah, there's so much information on all that stuff, only to read the bottom of it says, not applicable. Right. Not applicable.
It isn't in this one, but it could be.
Oh, I know. So I've read through a bunch of them. I mean, 30-inch diameter culvert is, that's big.
About this big.
30? No, that's about 18. Yeah. I mean, 30.
That's a big,
Big culvert.
What's the,
The town minimum is
on the
15.
scale, what is the distance across there? That there, I mean, where the wetland is being constricted?
Yeah. Oh, the width of it from,
Yeah,
say, east to west?
yeah.
I think the minimum culvert you can put in currently is 15. That's 20. It's over 40.
40 feet?
Yeah. Yeah, just about 40. At its widest. You know, at the edge of the retaining wall slash.
so that retaining wall is gonna go across here.
Because that's drawn.
Right, I mean,
Yeah, I got it. That's it.
so
It's a
that-
gem.
here it is, and so it goes across like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, a 30-inch culvert,
I think they're really messing with it.
30-inch culvert could carry all that water, it's just, it's gonna be constricted and enforced.
Correct,
say.
right. Yeah, so
So I
40.
don't think the 30 is a question about
Right.
capacity, it's about,
Yeah, it seems enormous for that zone. Like, having seen culverts that get put in, that's a big culvert for a piece of, for that flow. I mean, you're digging pretty, that's deep.
And then a smart beaver will come in, clog that up, start a pond in there.
I guess it's just, it's hard to say that it doesn't have an effect. That's the part I have trouble with. I would understand if we're accepting the fact that that is going to change something, there is an effect to it. And if it's understood and it's acceptable, that's fine, but to say that it doesn't, having seen what culverts do to other people's properties that I have to work at, and you see that, oh, unfortunately, someone directs a culvert onto your property,
right?
and this is the outcome.
Yeah.
You are affected downstream. But, I mean, does that mean it can't happen? I'm just saying it just is off-putting to hear that it doesn't have an effect, because I just can't imagine that's the case.
And it's not that you can't do something about it, it's not like he's saying you can't build here.
Right.
We would just, if we don't, we just need to notify the Wetlands Bureau that we're not approving.
Yep.
So,
And they'll give you an opportunity to say why not.
we need to state our reasons, but they don't need to be elaborate.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think the reason is pretty simple, is it's almost a 40-foot broad seepage zone with a major flow through there, it's gonna be constricted into 30 inches, and could cause erosion on the abutting property.
Right, onto a
That's it.
sloped piece of property there.
The owner doesn't own.
Yeah, that terminates directly at the property boundary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, the water finds its way through, and it probably,
Yeah.
it must run out that way.
Yeah, it would be the,
Because it's soggy when you get down to on the other property where the well is. I mean,
Oh,
if
yeah.
you walk out there in the summer, that's always pretty
yeah.
moist all in through there. So I think we just, it sounds like what we're doing is just saying, we don't approve, and these are our concerns, and then we've done our diligence.
Yeah, we've done our, except Ben has to do his homework now.
Big bucks.
I think it's a two-sentence explanation, that's what we don't.
Do we need to take a formal vote, or are you happy enough with?
I think we should, just to, that we have it on record, that
Right.
we discussed it and as submitted.
You're not being arbitrary about this, this is what the board has asked you to do.
Yeah. So I guess just so I get, or if someone wants to make a motion, I can
Are you
incorporate.
staying for this as the person who hires Greg Howard?
I'll second his motion.
I didn't make a motion.
I think he asked if you should
I said,
abstain.
should I be abstaining from this as the person who hires both of these, York
The Foley.
and,
I mean, I feel like that is
Very good.
kind of a clear conflict of interest, but
all right, well then I'll abstain from it. Although,
I
You know my
don't think
feelings.
that's not a conflict of interest, I don't think, you're not gonna gain anything out of it.
I lose something. Which I already have, so I'm comfortable, whatever. I just wanted to throw it out there. If you said that I should not be for any reason, then I'm comfortable. But I'm also comfortable that I feel like there probably is another solution to this. I'd be interested to see what it might be.
Of course, the Conservation Commission hired Greg Howard to do our plan for the falls.
You're right. Thank you.
So, at that rate, we all have conflicts.
All right, all right.
I don't think that's a conflict. I mean, if we hired him to do this particular job, then we said no, but, I mean, it's a small world up here at
Yeah,
some point.
yeah.
I'm sitting back, I don't have to make motions, so.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we do not approve it and expedite it. And our, and our concerns, to get to the argument, is after some of us have done a site visit, just to make sure that they understand, it's not just paper, that this would constrict a broad flowage area into a narrow flowage area through a culvert that then would direct all of the energy onto the abutting, because the pipe would end on the abutter's property.
Will adversely affect the next property.
Yeah, and I put the term may, because we don't,
Right.
May.
You seconded.
Second, I did,
So,
Yeah.
Chief.
I'm just getting these notes down.
2 for second.
There's a motion.
There's a hush.
Is there any other discussion on that?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
All right.
Aye. Opposed?
I have to abstain, just because.
if we have too many abstains, we don't have a quorum.
I don't know.
Well, I feel like abstentions don't affect quorum, but,
You have plenty.
okay.
And it's part of the quorum system.
Yeah, is the abstention, so, yeah. Okay. Okay,
That's right.
then I will draft a letter and send that out.
I'll be interested to see if it goes anywhere. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if there's a better way, it'd be nice if we can help that happen.
we may even be doing the landowner a favor in the long run.
Well, that was my concern, of just being like, well, what is our concern here is if we're talking about being a constriction, it's just gonna, if it's not the downhill property, if it's creating a barrier to flow, then it's just gonna overtop and wash that road out in an increased flow environment. Okay,
Here, we're looking out for the interest of the downhill property. Yes.
So the slightly adjacent, I was speaking to the town building inspector about a couple of things that he has noticed that have come up is that there are construction projects going on that have permits in place that are not moving forward. But because there has been so much rain, silt fences are getting overtopped. And he sort of had a question of whose responsibility is it to inform, enforce that those need to be maintained. 'Cause I think one of the properties in question was that they're in kind of protracted issue with the state, and you notice that they have not been maintaining the fences because they lost their contractor who's no longer on the job, so.
No, it's the contractor's responsibility initially.
But if he's gone or dismissed, it's the landowner.
Right, because they're the person who's on the permit.
Right, so, and the only reason that Jeff knows about some of these is that they're visible from the road. But there were a couple of properties that are off of Dundee, which are not visible from the road. And he just noticed that looking at the river, that there was a lot more sediment coming down the river, and went out and saw that there's, he was describing where this is, and it's like 100-foot sandy kind of cliff face that's just constantly eroding down. So it was just interesting. I guess it just brought up the point. It was like, is that something that we're comfortable taking on as, like, or is that something that we should be taking on, of monitoring all of these things, because the state isn't going to be monitoring them.
Is it like what we did with Black Mountain, where basically you send them a letter and say, hey, blah, blah, blah. and
Right,
cite-
the
and cite the
manure
chapter
pile
and verse, yeah.
Yeah, but
is
hold on.
adversely.
But Ben, you laid out two different kinds of events, and that's what I'm trying to separate out. If it's somebody's doing a construction project, and they have a silt fence and it's not working, then I don't think it's any different than with Black Mountain. Where you have a stream that's coming down and hitting highly erodible soils and moving around and eroding, that's natural erosion.
This
in a
is
stream.
due to construction, though.
Okay, if it's due to construction, yeah.
I mean, I think the first one is really easy to answer.
Yep.
Who's responsible for monitoring it would be, if there's a building permit has been pulled, and we have a building inspector who's responsible for the permitting of a project, then it's directly his responsibility to manage that.
Okay.
And then outside of that, I mean, if the permit has been expired and he no longer has any control because it's outside of his control, then I guess it becomes, maybe then it becomes a responsibility of us as in when we see what took place at Black Mountain. Because I'm sure Kevin can get involved in that, but it's slippery.
I said Jeff.
Yeah, I
said
know.
Jeff.
I was gonna correct you, but I just,
Kevin.
Kevin Bennett, yes. So, I mean, I'm on a project that's pretty large scale. There's a lot of excavation and the paperwork that you are required to go over, and like what your level of responsibility is almost frightening, if you screw up. So the responsibility is all on me as the contractor.
Right.
So the person who would oversee that would be the town, and if the town doesn't do it, then the state would come in. If someone reported that I wasn't managing my silt fences or didn't put fences or didn't have erosion control in place, then when someone filed a complaint, it would become, like when we do it, the state would get involved if the town didn't do something.
Right, and I think part of his question is, I think he was asking me, do we have a reporting function that we can get to the state? Because he was following up on things that had, like, he had heard that the state had gotten involved at some point, but hadn't heard anything, and then just kind of came by and said, well, the state's handling this, but in the process of the state handling, it's continued to happen.
Right, right, which is unfortunately what we tend to see, right?
Right.
Slow to react.
So you just have multiple levels of, different organizations saying, hey,
But again, the place to manage that is within your own town. If there's a person, if it end up being us, which it isn't currently, how could it be, So,
We have no enforcement powers. It would be between Kevin Bennett, the building inspector, and the selectmen. We can write to the people, the
Certainly, I guess it's-
landowner, and say, you have an issue here, we'd like you to address. And we can notify the selectmen that this property has an issue, and we've notified them, you should monitor this, you should be looking at this. And if it doesn't get rectified, then you have to take the next step. But we, as a board, we don't have any power of enforcement. We can write the letter.
We don't have the power of enforcement, but when we get notifications from the state that there's an enforcement action, like so we were, a few months ago, got a notification that there was a property owner who was failing to uphold their things. So if it's just a courtesy from the state to let us know versus the state letting us know and it's something that we can make observations on,
I think it's a little different than that, and I think in following what Dick is saying, in that some of these, they have to get a sign-off, just like the expedited permit here. If we don't sign off, he doesn't get the expedited permit,
correct.
okay? And I think the scenario we have here is we respond back that we're not willing to sign off because it doesn't meet whatever standards out there, which is different than requiring us then to go out and take the landowner to court or something like that. But we've done our diligence, because Dick is correct. If you read the RSA and what our abilities are, we're not an enforcement agency.
Right.
Well, I think if we feel the need to, Kevin feels the need to, we could write a friendly letter just saying, hey, you may not be aware of this, but you might be in violation of your permit because of these silt fences, and we just want to bring it to your attention. Because it's possible that the landowner has no idea.
But the part of the point of that is that we have a system in place just for that reason, because homeowners and even builders and contractors don't know sometimes the best practices or what the requirements are. Yet we have a board in town, that's their job, is to be the one who would look around and say, this is potentially.
Actually, the
a problem.
developer has the responsibility, just as the forester has the responsibility.
Right,
to-
well, the
to
developer
follow.
has the responsibility,
Yeah.
but it's the inspector who's the enforcing agent to
Right.
then make sure that you do it, because most people don't. And so that's the slippery slope. And I just don't like the idea of, I'm not saying this is what's happening, but this stuff should be caught before the problem. That's why, I go to tons of job sites and
Yeah.
I walk through them and I'm like, well, the time for the fence was then.
Yeah.
Not now. It's obvious, you don't always know what's gonna happen, but oftentimes it's pretty obvious to think, like, worst case scenario, I do not wanna be on the other end of this line if this fails. And for $25, you put up your silt fence and.
If you're on the Forest Service, you get a quick whoop.
Yeah, but if you see what the consequences are for doing it wrong and really doing it wrong, like having it really go wrong for you, like when we watched Sunny Couture's property get developed, like, that was massive, and the runoff that took place off that was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
What happened to Elmwood Brooks downstream? I mean, silt fence was gonna help that? I don't think so, you know?
Is Kevin willing to, follow up with the building permits that are still in effect to notify people?
I think that he was unsure, because he feels like that was sort of outside of his, well, once it got to the state level of enforcement, like the state's handling it, but
Yeah.
what is his obligation to report things that he sees? Like, who does he tell?
Well, we have a driveway permit, you know, we have a road agent. Like, they're part of that process as well. You know, that's why that's there, is to, A, make it so that the driveway is safe and accessible, but B, also so that the pitches and things don't wash out and affect the road, the neighbor, you know. Like, so there is more of a system here in town than there are in some of the other towns that we work in. Or at least we're lucky to have a building inspector who's a full-time person who you can present your problem to. A lot of towns don't have that, so it's like we're already off to a good start. But maybe just in the building permit application, there's more of a process that's acknowledging what are the requirements.
So, just to clarify, that somebody has brought the issue to the commission, correct?
Well, the building inspector brought it to the commission.
Okay, building inspector did. And he expected what from us?
He just wanted to know if we had an obligation there.
We don't, but he does and the state does.
Correct.
Because who requires the silt fence in the first place? Is it the state?
Yes. But
Well,
it's
It's part of the best practices.
correct.
Is they maintaining a properly installed silt fence to control erosion as part of the dredge and fill permit.
So
And
the erosion's going into the rivers. Are those the things that we're observing, or is it just going into driveway culverts and going into ditches?
there were several things that had come up where it wasn't clear as to what the jurisdiction was, or
Because the best practices does sound like the Black Mountain stuff, but if it's just something that's a driveway culvert, then,
There's best practices on that stuff as well.
okay.
Forestry has it, yeah.
I'll follow up with him and see if he had any more
Yeah.
specifics.
Yeah, because it seems to me like the conversation would go the other way.
Yeah.
Like, we would be telling him, like, as the enforcing agent, like, hey, this was brought to us, who do we go to? We would go to him,
Right.
right? It seems like it would go the other way.
Ben,
versus him coming to
what I
us.
might suggest is you go back to Kevin and say, we don't have enforcement capabilities as a commission. However, we do have concern relative to water quality conditions and whether because this is a development, right?
Or it could just be something
Right.
simple and small. Someone could be just re-loaming their entire yard.
But
You still need to have some
But
system
if,
set up for that.
but, our concern is that if the property is dumping its stuff onto somebody else's property, it is an issue for the town and it should be remedied.
Yeah. And
It's
I-
not different than what we just had here. Is
Yeah.
essentially what we're trying to do is say, don't dump your problem onto the neighbor, that's not fair.
Right, and I understand we should probably not skip over the simple part where he said that some of these permits are on projects that contractors aren't working on, or the contract is over, does that become a slippery slope for him?
That's how the brownfield sites get, and the taxpayer ends up footing the bill later on, which is not fair on the taxpayer.
Right, so, I understand where he's coming from in that point, like, at some point, like, he is a building inspector, but he's not like the fire chief who could actually lay down a hammer on something that's, not the life safety thing. He could actually come in and say, hey, this is not safe. I don't know if he has,
Did he report to the state as well?
He hasn't reported anything, but he was just, he received the same notification of us that the state was investigating something that we had discussed at our meeting, so he just wanted to know if we had any more information on that.
And is this the Route 316?
Yes.
So the state is investigating it right now.
So what's interesting on that is that it's already, but that's different than some of these other properties, because that's a property that already had issues with the state. And then there's a requirement to satisfy the state's requirements that they have created. So they're saying, this is what we want you to do because of this problem, and now that's not being done. But this other topic, which is probably happening all over the place, we know it is, are properties that are being developed that haven't been flagged, they haven't done anything technically wrong, yet they're being eroded and, or they're moving soils onto, either into the river, into culverts, or onto other people's properties. I believe it was a two-part kind of thing. I mean, obviously the state.
Well, if they're moving it onto other people's property, and it's moving it onto a road that's owned by the state or by the town, then the town has the right to take an issue with it, because they're the recipient of the problem at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, just if you're doing anything outside this year, any kind of movement of material, soils, any kind, you have got your,
Oh, yeah.
you are gambling. You better have some serious buffers to absorb what's coming, because these floods, these rains have been scary.
But as you move all of that extra sediment into your riverbed just spills the water onto somebody else, because you're filling up the riverbed with sediment.
Okay, well, I don't think that,
You have to get Ben a hat with a star on it, like sheriff.
no. You're trying to, yeah, no. Okay, well, I'll let him know that we've discussed it and,
We will support him in any
Yeah.
effort he has with the state in
I would,
enforcing it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's the other part, is that of course we would, if there's something we can do, of course it's of interest. It's just, it's actually nice to hear that someone's brought it up.
yeah. Okay. I think we've hit everything else on the agenda. So, is there any other comments or discussions?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I want to go over and catch the recycling thing that we're working on.
Okay.
So,
All those in favor?
Hank, you all right with this?